All right. Thanks, Q. Thanks for having you coming on today. It's great to see you again.
Tim, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, no, so let's start with, just what brought you to Hypergiant? Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. My background spans a ton of different kind of career paths and turns. When I was an undergrad at Texas A&M University, I was working on a space-based imaging constellation. Fast forward, a decade and a half, and my professor was actually working here at Hypergiant. So he was working on kind of a generation of that product that we were developing many years ago. And that is what initially pulled me into this company. There's an interesting story there for folks who are kind of starting their career. You never know what contacts are going to end up pulling you into new career directions 10, 15, 20 years in the future. You really just never know. And this is a really good example of that. I had done a whole bunch of other stuff in that interim time, but this one contact I made as an undergrad pulled me back into Hypergiant. I'm doing different things now here. I've been here for about 4 years. But yeah, it's a really interesting story for sure.
Yeah, no, and I mean, your education's aerospace engineering, physics, computer science.
Mm-hmm.
Despite the rocket on your lapel, Hypergiant does not make rockets. Is that correct?
We do not make rockets. That is correct.
Welcome to say if there's like an announcement that I don't know about.
Nope. We are not acquiring a rocket engine making company or anything like that. We are solely focused on software at this point. Yes, sir.
No. And I know we one of the first times we met, we talked about how Hypergiant has fused a bunch of different things. But what's so cool is that has created all this opportunity for people with a wide variety of skills. It's not just that you need PhDs in computer science. You need that breadth of skill with what you're doing right now. Is that right?
Yeah, in our early days of Hypergiant, if you will, we were pursuing a number of different, I'd say, quote unquote, moonshot type projects. Yeah. And in that era of the company, yeah, we amassed talent across a tremendously diverse skill set, and having people in your team who have done wildly different things. It's really hard to convey to people who haven't been in an environment like that how fundamentally empowering that is, and how you as a company just think differently when you can leverage those diverse mindsets, when you have people who are aerospace engineers, rocket scientists in the same room as people who are strategists or who have worked on technology or who have worked on more of nanotechnology or kind of the hard engineerings, and then software engineers all in the same room. The way you think as a company is just different, and it's part of our DNA for sure.
No, and you say this thinking difference in our DNA. There's on your LinkedIn page it says tomorrowing today, and the location is deep space, and it's got an actual number of kilometers to you, and that's fun. That's like a cool thing that is different. And software development, this could happen anywhere. It could happen in deep space. It's not. But it's just a fun way of weeding out the people who look at that and are like, oh, I don't like that. They self-select out. It's perfect.
Yeah, it's important to do things that are fun. It's important to be associated with a company that is aspirational in their thinking, right? Like our gaze is beyond the horizon, if you will. And when you have that mentality, it generates excitement, and it's just fundamentally super fun to work here for sure.
Yeah. Well, and so what do you do at Hypergiant?
Yeah, great question. Hypergiant, we are a software company.
Yeah.
What we do is we deliver software products to our client.
Okay.
We are really focused on kind of addressing, we like to call them these tactical operations use cases, right? So one of our biggest clients is the United States Air Force.
Yeah.
You walk into some operation centers within the United States Air Force, let's say NORAD, classic huge joint operations center in a mountain, let's say. You've got operators who are looking at dozens of different screens, trying to determine what in the air over North America is a threat? Do I need to take action? Is there a plane in distress? There's all this stuff, right? But people are looking at weather data, they're looking at radar data, they're looking at social media feeds, they're looking at, again, dozens of different things. Our company comes in and tries to stitch all of that together into a unified picture so that you deliver to an operator a very concise, low cognitive load way of visualizing that footprint. Now, this, what I'm talking about is a very Air Force specific use case, but that generic, operating center flow of coming in, providing a unified view where operators can do their job efficiently without being drowned in data, right? And that's the big thing is these days, whether you are scrambling jets for NORAD or you're doing food distribution in a timely manner across, the United States, you've got essentially too much data. You've got way more data than could ever be useful to you. If it's not distilled in a way that says, hey, here are the top 3 things for you to pay attention to. If you don't do something in the next 2 minutes, you're going to lose this truck, or this thing's going to be a problem, or this thing's going to be a major problem, but you will no longer have the ability to do something with it. So that general workflow we are attacking with software user interfaces, artificial intelligence, big data decision tools to really give that person sitting behind those screens, whether they are in commercial, Department of Defense, whatever, the ability to make informed decisions as quickly as possible.
No, and the way you were describing this reminded me. So I've been playing with computers since I was 4. So that involved DOS in the Wayback Machine. For those of you kids, we had to program everything. We had to program open game. It's disgusting. But it sounds like what Hypergiant's doing is building a graphic user interface for the 21st century based on the amount of data coming in.
Yeah, that's correct. There's you think about, it's not just data, it is data. It's tons of data.
Yeah.
It's also these decision aids. You're talking about, you can't open a web browser without being inundated with news around artificial intelligence, large language models, right? So it's the idea of how do you stitch together those things? How do you take a useful or a valuable AI tool, ML tool, and data and present it to someone who may be a 19-year-old who doesn't have deep technical experience, but they are responsible for operating a fleet of vehicles, or they're responsible for operating some infrastructure for the enterprise, or they're a warfighter and they're responsible for defense of the country. So how do you equip someone with tools, very, very sophisticated technical tools, tons of data in such a way that it makes sense to them and they have confidence when they author some sort of change in the world, scrambling jets, redirecting traffic, whatever it is, that they know that they're making the right choice, right? And so that's a very, very complicated problem. And it starts with that human machine interface, that graphical user interface, to give them the awareness and the confidence that what they're doing are the right things, for sure.
Well, and I would imagine that's, would be challenging to get people to understand that they need it. If they're close to the problem, maybe they're like, well, we've always done it this way. We just have 40 screens and we just figure it out. From the outside, it's like, well, we could do this with one and, some back-end software. What's that like? Because, the militaries can be a hard customer to sell to. You guys have already broken in with the Air Force, but
what it's like is challenging. You mentioned my background in aerospace engineering, and us aerospace engineers, we have this habit of if something works, don't ask me to change it, because you adopt a whole new risk profile when you add change to things, right? So you're right. I mean, across the country, and whether or not we're talking about civilian aviation or actual Department of Defense stuff, or enterprise, let's say banking or something like that, right? Yeah, you've got folks in a room who know how to do a thing and they've been doing it for 40 plus years. And when you take away their dozens of screens and you give them just 1 or 2, you're forcing them to change. And that's tough, right? Because you're telling them that what you have trusted as your gut instincts or the tools that you've used for 40 years, I'm going to take them away from you and I'm going to give you something that works better. There's an element of trust there that you need to earn. So it's not one of these things that happens overnight, but it's very challenging. I mean, so when we talk about being a software company, like it's not just sitting behind screens and having developers like cranking out code. It's
Yeah.
sitting down with these users and getting them to trust you and having personal conversations with actual users of your eventual system to understand what do they do day in and day out, what are their pains, and actually delivering something to them that they didn't know they needed, but once they have it, they realize like, oh, holy moly, this actually does make my life better. This solves problems for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and when you go to your website and some of the stuff I've seen for Command Center, this product, like it looks good. This isn't just, a bunch of cobbled together Microsoft Office screens. That like this could be in an Apple commercial or an Adobe demo. It's just smooth, it's pretty. Like that's got to
It's
go a long way.
it almost goes all the way, right? Like it's hard to describe how important working with tools that look and feel good
Yeah.
is. A lot of the feedback, we'll roll into some, 4-star journal in the Air Force. We'll give a highly technical briefing, and at the end, one of the top comments is always, "This stuff is great. All of the engineering, like brouhaha you showed us, is great, but your stuff just simply looks better than anything I have ever seen."
Yeah.
And that's important because if you're going to send some 19-year-old to a cave where they're clicking a button, on a 12-hour shift, and you're giving them tools that are horrible, that look painful, and are painful to use, like there's a psychological element there
Yeah.
that essentially leads to low performance in the tool. So
Oh, yeah.
delivering tools to users that look and feel enjoyable and great to use is very, very important. And we do it better than almost anyone else.
No, it's true. Like this is, there's tons of examples of companies that are relatively early stage and they have demos and it's just CGI. They'll basically animate things. But when I look at what you guys are doing, a lot of this is real world data. This isn't a simulation, but it looks like it could be. It's incredible.
That's correct. And then there's actually a ton of science between exactly how things look as well. It's not just there's an element of art here, like making things look really, really good requires that you have a team of artists who know how to make things look good. But there's also like picking colors strategically in such a way that, colors convey something to a user, and it's not just something that we backed into by luck, the thickness of lines, how certain icons appear. Like we get to those things by tens and thousands of hours of sitting down with the user and understanding what works and what doesn't. So it's not just, hey, we came up with something that looks amazing. It also works really, really well too.
Yeah, no, and that's one thing that stood out when, I looked at the leadership team of Hypergiant. There's the CEO, CFO, the standard C-suite, but then there's a chief design officer. I'm like, wait a minute. This is like, sure, places like Adobe, Microsoft, Google have this, but that's not common in, the stage where Hypergiant is. And I think it's reflected in how good everything looks, feels, and functions. So it's cool.
Yeah, when you look at some of the more traditional Department of Defense prime integrators, like design is kind of an afterthought, or it's designed by engineers.
Yep.
And I am an engineer, so I feel confident in saying this. Like we are good at certain things. Designing user interfaces are not those things, right? So being able to have as a first-class citizen design at your executive level, I think that speaks volume because we treat it at the same level as technology for sure.
Yeah, no, it's cool. And, getting to that point and baking that into your DNA makes it easier for everybody else who comes in later. Because then the engineers like, this is just what we do.
Yep.
So that has to be handy.
Sure.
Yeah, so I know, this month with Conversations for the Future, we're talking a lot about workforce development and what that looks like out in the real world. Hypergiant's been growing. I think according to LinkedIn, you guys have grown 22% by headcount in the last year. What's it like looking for new talent right now?
It's, in some ways it's, we kind of have an unfair advantage because we have a unique mission. I'm proud to work for a company who is working for the Department of Defense, who is very mission oriented. We're starting to see a few other companies kind of like take on this mantle, which I'm very proud of. It seems like, some American institutions are kind of eschewing like the traditional Silicon Valley thing of, poo-pooing Department of Defense or whatever, but rather embracing that. So, we are kind of on the crest of that wave as well. And so in some ways, folks come to us because they're excited to deliver something to a mission oriented company and help, push forward national security. So that's one. And, we, at the end of the day, whether or not we're working for the Department of Defense or enterprise customers, I mean, we're building stuff that just looks state of the art. And so that helps as well.
Yeah.
It is, I mean, it's an interesting world to recruit in out there. I'm certainly not an expert recruiter, but one thing that's a challenge when you're recruiting for, national security interests is like finding folks who are willing and able to do things like get a security clearance.
Yeah.
And there's an easy button here, which is like, I'm just going to go and pilfer folks who have existing security clearances from other companies. That doesn't actually, in my opinion, increase workforce development as a whole for this country, right? So we really embrace taking those non-traditionals, folks who have never worked for a defense contractor, who have never been in the military before, and training them, upskilling them, giving them opportunity to get a security clearance if they've never had it before. And that's something that I'm really passionate about, because that will fundamentally increase overall workforce development in this country, not just like trading mass between companies, if you will.
Yeah. No, and that's a huge issue in a number of these technical fields. It's just a circular economy of the employees going from one to another. And what kind of people though are the ones that are the ideal candidates for what you're looking for?
The biggest thing for me is, if you are a software engineer, I care less about your specific skill sets, like whether or not you've developed in React for 10 years or whether or not you know what JavaScript is. That you are technically gifted, that you have experience in software development is important. We will train you up on the specific skills that you need. What I need from someone who wants to work here as a software engineer, let's say, is someone who has a desire to push boundaries, jump into areas where they are certain to not know the answers and be okay with that. Have initiative, like just be hungry for growth. That is more important than like these bullet points of I know these specific things. Because by the way, we're probably going to put you in a project that requires some experience that no one in the world has before. So that's interesting. And then also, we talk about developing software. Engineering is maybe less than half of the problem. We've already talked about design. Design is also another huge part of this. So and design, when we use design, it's not just sitting down and being artful or creative with how things look. It's also sitting down with users and understanding what are their pain points. So, true user-centered design process end to end, trying to figure out what we are going to build that's going to solve user problems. You have to be communicative. You have to be willing to really dive deep, ask good questions, convince someone that maybe they're not right, or maybe those, as we mentioned, those 40 years of experience, you've learned some bad habits, and artfully trying to get people to learn new ways of doing things. So those two things are important, and leaders as well. We need folks who can lead these teams. And the other thing I'll mention, a big component of Hypergiant's hiring, especially on the defense side, is pulling subject matter experts and actual users from the military who have used these tools that we're building, who kind of bring an unparalleled experience onto our team. There's something that, being in the military for 18, 20, 25 years does to you from a subject matter expert that like you cannot replicate. And so we are very active in like trying to find those individuals who are interested in engaging industry, who are maybe uncertain about how Someone coming from the military may say like, well, I never have coded before. I don't have like software engineering experience. I will help you get that if that's what you care about. But I look at you and say like, you are a subject matter expert. What's in your mind is something that I cannot go acquire on the industry street. And so I'm very interested in pulling those people in as well.
Yeah. No, and I think that's a great point that well, there's a couple things there. The one that like, hey, we'll train you with the specifics because in some cases this has never been done. Which can be like a really cool thing to step into if you're a new person. Like, hey, but that idea of like, hey, we want people who've used this to come back around. They've been customers. Now help us make it better for the next round. That's got to be exciting for the potential new hire and for you all, because there's always some sort of back and forth between customers and like, no, it's great, it's okay, we don't want to change. But having that honest feedback's got to be invaluable.
Yeah, 100% agree. And, folks who are in the military who are looking for companies who are mission oriented and kind of can extend their career in driving, DoD innovation forward. You could do that without wearing a uniform here at Hypergiant. And so that's something that we're also proud of as well.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I know we're getting close on time. One thing I did want to make sure I hit on is, so when people go to your careers page, there's two sections. There's Hypergiant Industries, which is the official name, but then there's Hypergiant Galactic Systems. I've got to know.
That is, most companies, they separate their federal work from their private sector work. And so we have just kind of labeled that federal cage code holder entity, if you will, Galactic Systems. So when you see Hypergiant Galactic Systems, that is, that represents our work for the Department of Defense.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for not naming it Hypergiant Federal.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, is there anything that we missed talking about that you wanted to make sure we hit on?
I just want to stress that, working here, like this is the most fun I have ever had. Yeah. I've done a number of different things in my career. That the quality of people that we have here in this company from top to bottom is just truly remarkable. And so, I urge folks who are looking for something new, who are, trying to find something that are mission focused. We should be at the top of your list. This is the best job I've ever had. And I think I speak for most of the other people who work here who would echo that sentiment for sure.
Yeah. And being an outsider, I've talked to you, talked to Mike, CEO there at Hypergiant, and like there's this palpable sense that you all want to succeed in this mission. And it's like we have an answer, we're driving towards it. Like if you've got a better idea, let's go. Let's figure out, maybe we need a pivot. And there's not this rigidity, which excites me. And I'm sure it excites others.
Yeah, there's, one of the best things you can do when you hire people is to set your ego aside, right? Yeah. You hire smart people so they can help pull you in new directions, not so that you can tell them what to do, if you will. And so I think we embrace that wholeheartedly here at Hypergiant.
Yeah, no, it's very cool. Well, thank you for being here today, Q. This has been great.
Tim, this was great. I like your wardrobe today.
Brother. Thank you. So, just happened to wear this. I have no idea how this happened. But yeah, take care and look forward to seeing you soon.
I appreciate it, sir. Thank you so much.
Take care.